Ever feel like your money's playing hide and seek? You earn it, you pay the bills, but then poof, it just seems to vanish before you can really do anything with it. Like you're stuck in a game you can't quite win.
Oh, definitely. That feeling is incredibly common, and it's often not the big, obvious expenses that are the main culprits.
Exactly, yeah. Today on The Deep Dive, we're going deep into those sneaky, hidden spending habits and the surprising psychology behind our decisions. These are the silent money drainers, sabotaging financial goals, often without us even realizing it.
Right. Our source material for this deep dive pulls from articles and research rooted in behavioral finance, that fascinating field exploring the why behind our financial choices, alongside, well, practical strategies designed to unmask and halt these invisible leaks.
So our mission for you today is pretty clear. We want to help you understand why we sometimes make, let's face it, irrational money decisions, how to become a financial detective to find those silent drainers, and maybe most importantly, how to stop them so you can take back control. Okay, let's unpack this feeling of vanished money. Where does it really go?
Well, traditional financial theory often operates on the assumption that humans are perfectly rational economic agents, right? Always making decisions in their own best interest based on logic and self-control.
Yeah, the ideal human spreadsheet.
Exactly. But behavioral finance offers a much more, well, realistic perspective.
Which is?
That our financial behaviors are deeply influenced by psychological factors, biases, emotions. We're not spreadsheets walking around. We're complex beings. And that complexity definitely impacts our wallets.
So understanding behavioral finance isn't just academic. It's actually a practical tool because it reveals where and when our natural human tendencies lead us away from rational financial paths. It kind of highlights the trapdoors we fall into.
Absolutely. It helps us see those deviations. The sources highlight several key psychological concepts at play here. Think about mental accounting. This is where we mentally assign money to different buckets or purposes sometimes. Yeah, illogical ones. Like feeling okay splurging a bonus check but being really strict with your regular paycheck, even though it's all just money.
Oh, I've totally seen that. Or, treating tax refunds differently than earned income. It feels like free money.
Right. And then there's the emotional gap concept, making financial decisions driven by intense feelings like anxiety, fear, or maybe even impulsive excitement.
That stress-induced online shopping spree after a bad day at work.
Precisely. Classic emotional gap. Another big one is anchoring, where our spending levels get tied to certain kind of arbitrary reference points, maybe comparing prices only to an inflated original price tag to feel like you got a deal.
Or getting stuck on a budget you set years ago that just doesn't reflect your life now.
Yeah, exactly. Or even just anchoring to what you spent last month without questioning if that was reasonable. And don't forget, self-attribution bias. That tendency to be overconfident in our own financial knowledge or skill. It can lead us to make choices we might regret later because, well, we didn't seek outside perspective or truly evaluate the risk involved. I know what I'm doing.
Right. Okay, so what's fascinating here is how these deeper psychological things actually show up in our day-to-day spending, especially with impulse buys and those costs that just seem to disappear.
Exactly. One source really dives into how spending is driven by emotions and enjoyment. It's that hit of dopamine from buying something new, using shopping as retail therapy, or, trying to numb a bad day. That ties directly back to that emotional gap idea we mentioned.
It's such a temporary fix, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it can create a long-term problem. The sources also point out how our past experiences, especially money habits learned in childhood, can really shape our current financial mindset and spending patterns.
It's like this built-in programming we might not even be aware of, let alone question.
And then there's the power of believing it's a deal. Marketing is so good at this.
Oh, yeah. Sales, limited time offers, free shipping if you spend X amount. These tactics aren't just about value, they're psychological triggers. They tap into our desire for a bargain, sometimes completely overriding our actual need or budget.
You see experiential or recency bias playing a role too, right? Where recent events seem much more important or likely in our minds.
Definitely. While it's often discussed with investing risk, like panic selling after a market dip, it can apply to spending too. Maybe buying heavily into a trend you just saw everywhere online, thinking it's more significant than it is.
And let's not forget confirmation bias. Finding reasons to justify what we already want.
Oh, absolutely. Selectively seeking out information that confirms a purchase you're already leaning towards. See, this one review totally justifies buying the slightly more expensive one I wanted anyway.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting and links directly back to that feeling of vanishing money. These psychological factors are precisely why we fall prey to invisible expenses, what one source vividly calls the drip, drip, drip effect.
It's so insidious because we miss these leaks for several key reasons. First, automation. You set up subscriptions, auto payments, recurring deliveries. It's convenient, sure, but it leads to set it and forget it. And we forget what it's actually costing us month after month.
It just happens in the background. Then there's convenience culture, frictionless payment systems, one-click purchases, instant delivery apps. They remove the psychological pain of parting with money, don't they?
They absolutely do. It doesn't feel like a big deal in the moment.
Yeah?
And tied to that is the sheer small amounts of many individual transactions. A $5 coffee here, a $10 app subscription there, maybe a $7 delivery fee. Alone, they seem negligible. They don't trigger any mental alarm.
But fueled by those psychological drivers we talked about, emotions, convenience, maybe a perceived deal, and then compounded by automation, they become hundreds, even thousands of dollars a year. That's the silent sabotage. That's where the money vanishes.
Exactly right. Which means the critical next step, really, is becoming your own financial detective. You have to shine a bright light on these leaks. The sources are clear. This requires a financial audit. Creating transparency about your current reality. It might be a bit uncomfortable, maybe even shocking, but it's so necessary.
Okay, time to grab that magnifying glass and maybe a cup of coffee made at home, perhaps, and settle in with your bank statements. The bank statement deep dive method is foundational here. Go through, 3-6 months of all your accounts? Checking, savings, credit cards, everything.
Everything. And don't just scan the totals, you need to categorize every single transaction. Use simple labels: housing, utilities, groceries, transport, dining out, entertainment, subscriptions, shopping fees, whatever makes sense for you. This is where that awakening experience, as one source calls it, truly hits.
I bet. You'll likely have major aha moments, discovering forgotten recurring charges you thought you canceled ages ago, finding you have, 3 different streaming services you barely even touch, or seeing the sheer volume and cost of those little impulse online purchases or daily coffee runs when they're all added up over months.
Right. One source mentioned someone realizing they spent more on delivery fees in a single year than their entire vacation budget. That's an eye-opener.
Wow. So the power's in challenging every single line item. Asking yourself, was this purchase really necessary? Did it align with my values or goals? Could I have gotten it cheaper or maybe even free? Was it driven by impulse or genuine need?
And a specific area that's almost always ripe for this kind of audit is subscription creep. How many forgotten free trials accidentally turn into paid memberships? How many apps do you pay for monthly but literally never open? How many gym memberships are just gathering dust?
Guilty as charged on some of those in the past.
We've all been there. So the action is, list every single subscription you have. Check your bank statements for those direct debits, look through your phone settings for app subscriptions, then evaluate each one honestly. Are you using it regularly? Is it truly worth the recurring cost? Is there a free or maybe cheaper alternative that meets your needs just as well?
And then, the crucial part.
Yeah.
Take immediate action. Cancel or downgrade the ones you don't use or need. Don't put it off. Maybe even set a calendar reminder to do this every quarter because, let's be honest, new ones will try to sneak back in.
Absolutely. Another significant leak to track is the convenience tax. This is all that extra money we pay simply for saving time or effort. Think delivery fees, surge pricing for ride shares, buying pre-cut veggies or single-serve snacks, paying for premium parking spots close to the entrance.
Try tracking just these convenience-driven costs for a week. Just isolate those. The total might genuinely shock you. It really highlights areas where a small investment of your time, like packing a lunch, making coffee at home, planning grocery trips better, can yield significant financial savings over the long run.
It really can. And finally, you've got to tackle impulse spending head-on by creating an impulse buy inventory. First step is awareness. Become aware of your personal triggers. Is it stress? Boredom? Scrolling through social media? Seeing those tempting sales emails? Just walking past a specific store?
Knowing your triggers is half the battle, right?
It really is. Once you identify them, you can implement a pause button. The sources strongly suggest a waiting period rule for any non-essential purchase over a certain amount, and you decide that threshold, wait 24 to 48 hours before actually buying. Put in the online cart, sure, but don't click purchase. Sleep on it.
So often that urge just fades once the initial psychological trigger cools off. Plus, you can proactively prune those triggers, unsubscribe from marketing emails that tempt you, maybe mute social media accounts that constantly push consumption.
Exactly. And tools can be invaluable here. Budgeting apps or even a simple spreadsheet can help automate the categorization process we talked about. They give you visualizations of where your money is actually going, maybe contrasting it with where you thought it was going.
Some offer frameworks too, like the 50-30-20 rule: 50% needs, 30% wants, 20% savings or debt repayment, which can give you a starting point.
Right. But the key, as the sources really emphasize, is finding a tool or a system you'll actually use consistently. The best tool is the one that works for you.
Okay, so we've done the hard detective work. We've uncovered the leaks, hopefully. We know where the money's been vanishing. Now comes the really important part: taking action, implementing strategic hacks to plug those drainers and control those impulse triggers using what we learned about the psychology behind it all.
And this really requires a fundamental mindset shift. One source suggests adopting what they call a default no approach.
Default no. Okay, tell me more.
Instead of asking, can I afford this? You train yourself to default to no for non-essential expenses. Unless you've consciously reviewed it and decided it genuinely aligns with your budget and your values, it puts you back in the driver's seat rather than reacting.
I love that. It flips the power dynamic completely. And planning ahead seems like another critical strategy that directly combats both impulse buys and that convenience tax.
Absolutely. Meal prepping for the week. That eliminates those spontaneous, often expensive takeout decisions when you're tired and hungry. Using a strict shopping list at the grocery store keeps you focused and avoids those tempting end cap displays.
And planning free or low-cost activities for your weekends or evenings instead of defaulting to paid entertainment. Even simple acts like packing snacks and water before you leave the house can prevent those impulse buys driven purely by thirst or hunger when you're out and about.
Right. Shopping with a plan, knowing what you need. And some sources even suggest using cash for discretionary spending categories because physically handing over cash creates more friction, makes you more mindful than just tapping a card.
That waiting period rule we mentioned comes back as a powerful action step here too, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely. It directly interrupts that emotional response or that must have it now because it's a deal bias. It gives your rational brain space to catch up.
And don't overlook those recurring bills. It's easy to set them on autopay and forget them, but make it a habit to negotiate and review bills annually. Call your internet, phone, or cable providers. Loyalty isn't always rewarded automatically. Sometimes you have to ask for a better rate or see if bundling services make sense.
Good point. And consider embracing DIY where it makes sense for you. We mentioned coffee earlier, that daily $5 habit. That's over $1,800 a year. Making coffee at home is such a simple change with massive cumulative savings. Look for online tutorials for basic home repairs, simple sewing tasks, maybe even haircuts if you're feeling brave.
Maybe start small with the DIY and leverage community resources. Your local library is an absolute goldmine: free books, movies, audiobooks, sometimes online courses, maybe even tools or museum passes you can borrow.
Parks offer free recreation. Community centers have low-cost activities. Explore local swap groups online or free cycling networks before buying something new.
And let's directly address those impulse triggers we identified earlier. The sources are really clear on this. Don't shop when you're emotional. If you're feeling stressed, sad, bored, or even overly excited and celebratory, maybe step away from the buy now button.
Yeah, it's a danger zone. And stop comparisons. Social media especially fuels that desire to keep up with others, which almost inevitably leads to overspending. Ask yourself honestly, would I still want this item if no one else ever saw it?
That's a powerful question.
Yeah.
Doing a temporary no-spend challenge, maybe for a week or a month, can also be a fantastic way to reset your habits and build intense awareness of where your money is truly going outside of absolute essentials.
A great reset. And a big action step, particularly if impulse spending is a major struggle for you. Strongly consider ditching credit cards for discretionary or impulse buys.
Why specifically credit cards?
Because credit cards create this psychological distance, it doesn't feel like you're spending real money right away. It's abstract. Plus, if you carry a balance, the interest just adds insult to injury.
Right. One source cited an average credit card interest rate around, 21.59%?
Yeah, something crazy high like that. It means an impulse purchase ends up costing you significantly more than the sticker price if you don't pay it off immediately. Using cash or even a debit card creates that necessary friction, that pause. You see the money leaving your account right away.
Okay, so finding and cutting expenses is vital. We get that. But as the sources really powerfully highlight, that's only the first half of the equation, isn't it? The real magic, the real power, happens when you strategically redirect that newly freed up money.
This is where you really turn defense into offense. And the single most impactful strategy here, according to the sources, is to automate your savings. Like immediately, as soon as you plug those leaks and identify money, you can now save maybe $50 a month from a canceled subscription, $100 from packing lunches, set up automatic transfers.
From your checking account to a dedicated savings or investment account.
Exactly, and have it happen immediately after you get paid or on a regular schedule. Use that out of sight, out of mind principle, but this time working for you, not against you.
Give that money a specific job before you even have a chance to miss it or spend it elsewhere. So what kind of jobs, what are the typical goals for this redirected money?
Well, a top priority for many should be building or topping off an emergency fund. Aim for 3 to 6 months of essential living expenses stashed away in an accessible savings account. That provides a crucial safety net.
Makes sense. Well,
Or perhaps it's aggressively paying down high-interest debt, things like credit cards, payday loans. Getting rid of that debt saves you a ton of money on interest over time and frees up even more cash flow later.
good point.
Or maybe it's contributing consistently to investment accounts. Think an IRA, a 401k if you have one, or a brokerage account for long-term wealth building, for retirement, for other big future goals.
And setting specific financial goals is key here, right? It provides the crucial why behind all this effort.
Absolutely critical. A down payment on a house, saving for a dream vacation, achieving financial independence, maybe starting a business. These concrete goals give your redirected money purpose. They provide powerful motivation when you're faced with those spending temptations later on.
Maybe even visualizing those goals regularly, putting up pictures. Does that help?
It really can. Visualizing the goals makes them feel more real and reinforces your commitment when, that shiny new thing tries to grab your attention.
And this isn't just a one-time fix, is it? It requires ongoing attention.
Definitely not set it and forget it entirely. Regular financial checkups are essential. Schedule time maybe monthly or at least quarterly to review your spending relative to your budget and your goals. See how you're tracking.
And celebrate the progress. Seeing the impact of your detective work and the action steps you've taken is really motivating.
It is, and these check-ins allow you to make necessary adjustments. Maybe you need to tweak a budget category, maybe you found another leak to plug, and communication about money and, importantly, how you feel about it is also key, especially if you share finances with a partner or family.
The sources describe a wonderful snowball effect that can happen here. As you identify and eliminate some of these invisible expenses, you gain confidence, right?
Exactly, and that makes you more aware and motivated to find more leaks. Each plugged leak frees up more money, which accelerates your savings or your debt repayment, and that creates this positive feedback loop. It builds momentum and really accelerates your path to building wealth.
It sounds like shifting from feeling powerless about money vanishing to feeling empowered by intentionally directing it.
That's precisely it. Ultimately, the temporary pleasure of an impulse buy is, fleeting. But the intentional act of redirecting that same money towards your most important financial goals brings a sense of lasting control, security, and frankly, freedom. It's a far more rewarding feeling in the long run.
So to wrap up this deep dive, you've learned about the psychological biases that often influence our spending without us even realizing it. You've got techniques now to uncover those hidden money drainers, the subscriptions, the convenience taxes, the impulse buys, and you have strategy to redirect those funds towards what actually matters to you. Breaking free from that feeling of money just vanishing is incredibly empowering.
It truly is. By becoming more mindful, by doing your own financial detective work, and by implementing these smart practical strategies, you're not just saving money, you're actively shaping your financial future. You're taking the wheel.
So as you think about your own situation after listening today, maybe consider this. You now have a much better understanding of why you might fall into certain spending traps and how to identify the specific leaks that are unique to your life and habits. How can simply recognizing these patterns in your own behavior fundamentally transform your relationship with money? How could it dramatically accelerate your path towards achieving the goals that truly matter most to you?